So, welcome everybody to our special webinar with Michelle. So, I am here this afternoon to chat a little bit more with Michelle Roques-O'Neil about the wonder of aromatherapy. So whether you are a member of IFPA or not, you are the most welcome here, and we hope that you will learn something new. And if you are not a member of IFPA and would like to know more, then feel free to get in touch, because we are always hoping to welcome new members in. So let's make a start. So Michelle, welcome. Thank you so much for generously giving us your time this afternoon. And I am thrilled to be speaking with you and can't wait to hear what's going to come out of our conversation. So shall we start with maybe your aromatherapy story? Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into aromatherapy and how it captured you?
Yeah, sure. I guess in an odd sort of way, aromatherapy surrounded me from a very early age. I grew up, my early life was in India till I was about 8 years old. And, India is a place that has a profusion of aromas around it, some nice, some not so nice. But I was constantly surrounded by smell. My nanny at the time used to take me to the temple, so that was kind of like one of the first times I smelt sandalwood and I smelt rose. So those kind of marked me quite indelibly. And then I guess nothing much happened. All I knew that all through my life I was always interested in herbs and mixing potions and kind of natural scents. I used to, back in the old days, love patchouli. I know a lot of people have a love-hate relationship, but it was something that intrigued me. I'd never ever quite smelt anything like it. And that sort of led me to just kind of experimenting with perfumes on myself. And then I reached a bit of a crossroads where I thought I needed to find a career. I didn't know what to do. At the time, I sort of seemed to cut hair for friends, and they said, look, why don't you go and do something professional? And I said, oh God, I don't know what. Anyway, I got onto a course that taught which was a beauty course, and I learned massage. Had no idea that I was good at anything like massage. It never even entered my mind it would be a profession I might even consider. As a result of that, I met a really lovely lady called Elizabeth Jones, and Elizabeth Jones was our examiner and our anatomy and physiology teacher, and she actually sort of created an aromatherapy course. And this was, I'm talking a long time ago, I'm talking about sort of in the early 70s. And it was quite an interesting course because it was very laborious. There were a lot of compresses, and it was all quite an unusual take on it. But basically that was my first impression of aromatherapy. When I qualified from the school, I had to go and do a kind of apprenticeship, if you like, somewhere, and I met this model who was coming to see me for treatment, and she said, you're wasted doing massage, you need to do this new therapy called aromatherapy. And I kind of thought so actually that story about Liz Jones, it actually comes after. But basically I hadn't really thought about it. She said, yes, there's this lady called Micheline RCA, not many people know about it, but you work with aromatic plants, and she said you must go and see her. Didn't think anything of it. Then ended up coming to work at the owner of the school that I'd been in's place, and this is where I found out about the aromatherapy. Did the course, found it a bit clunky, didn't really understand it. And I think generally when you don't understand something, it's because the way it's been put together isn't clear enough. So anyway, continued to work. I was working as a makeup artist and a beauty therapist at the time, and then gave up work. And once I had given up work for a little while, my partner could look after me, so there was no need to work. I started feeling really bored, and I kind of thought to myself, I can't go on like this. I'm only X. I think I was quite young at the time. And I thought, I'm not ready to kind of retire as yet.
Yeah.
And I suddenly remembered this Micheline RCA. So basically, to cut a long story short, I actually wrote to her and I said, you don't know me. Someone suggested I should get in touch with you. I am really interested in aromats. Anyway, I wrote to her, not expecting to hear back from her. And I got a letter inviting me to her clinic in Knightsbridge. So what ensued was me trying to understand everyththen about aromatherapy in 2 days, just swatting up on it, reading, Robert Cicerone's book,
Yeah.
and then basically rocking up to her place and basically trying to bluff that I knew everything about aromatherapy. I did the treatment, and then I remember being brought into her office, which seemed like a ballroom to me.
Wow.
And I sat down and she said, I'm not actually looking for anybody, but you definitely have it. I can see it in your hands. I can see the light in your hands, and I can see that we can do something with you. And she said, I'm opening a clinic on time. 6 months' time, I'll contact you and you can come and join me. So I went away not really expecting to hear from her, but literally 6 months to the day, I received a letter through the letterbox saying, right, are you ready to start training?
Wow.
And that's how it happened. I had no idea really what I was going into. It was a completely different world. It was it was a mixture of scientific and spiritual. I arrived at the clinic, became an apprentice to her. And I suppose from the moment I arrived there, the very few times you arrive somewhere and you're absolutely in the right place and you're learning absolutely the thing that you've been looking for probably the past 10 years. And that's basically what happened. That's how the love affair started. Just even smelling the aromas as I walked into her clinic was like, oh my God, it was like it touched some sort of cellular memory in me.
Yeah.
That was a very long explanation of my journey, but that's where it started.
And then what about present day then? So obviously there's going to be quite a lot in between, but what about where are you at now and what are you doing now with your aromatherapy?
Okay, so gosh, I'm trying to see where to segue. So basically I trained with her. What intrigued me was I was trying to understand what I was doing in the treatment, because we were trained in a very specific interpretation of how we touch the body. It wasn't a Swedish massage. It was a very, very specific treatment. And what I kept getting were incredible responses from my patients. And basically, I spent the next probably 5 years really trying to understand what I was doing to achieve that kind of outcome. And as a result, it kind of connected me with Chinese medicine. It made me start working very much with energy, metaphysical science. So really that was my journey over that period. And what happened was that culminated in me creating my own sort of method, my own aromatherapy application method, and also creating my own range of products. And at that time, I don't think many people were doing aromatherapy. I think it was on the first boom of aromatherapy, which would have been around the 80s.
Yeah.
At that time, I think everybody and his friend was sort of doing an aromatherapy course, and they were all experts after a weekend. And it was very hard to explain. Actually, aromatherapy isn't quite as easy as you think, but it's very nuanced, and there are many levels to how the oils work. And you can have 5 oils that deal with exactly the same complaint, but you have to kind of look at how the complaint is presenting itself. as to which oil you would choose. So that's where it took me. I sort of had this treatment and I was doing very well. You know, it was being written up in newspapers, etc. Met a lady called Nikki Kinnaird, who
Okay.
was she had just launched Space NK,
Yeah.
and she was a client of mine. And Nikki said, "Would you design a signature treatment for me?" So she said, "I want to have it in our spa. I really think people need to have a treatment that affects them on many different levels and resets and rebalances them." So in a way, she kind of introduced me much more into consultancy work, where I sort of started to develop and create treatments for other people. What's happened since is, I suppose I have discovered a shorthand to the longhand of the treatment I was doing,
Yeah.
which would take 90 minutes to do.
Yeah.
And I suppose I've kind of condensed and focused my treatment more. So now I work much more on a vibrational and an energetic level. I tend to use the oils both for application, but also alongside visualization and breath work.
Excellent.
So I'm working with the oils a lot more energetically, but I still very much am aware of how they can support people on a physical level. I have a range now of my own called therapy, which is doing well. The reason I created it was because even though I was a practicing aromatherapist, I kind of felt there was a dependency on the therapist, and people weren't taking enough responsibility for their own well-being. So basically the whole range was built around the idea that obviously stress is a huge factor nowadays. People are suffering from anxiety, depression, insomnia, all of those things. And I wanted to create a range that actually dealt with all of those areas of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
And get people applying it and taking responsibility for their well-being themselves.
Yes.
So yes, the prescriptive range, but what I feel that does is it frees people to come to see experts for not just maintenance, but to move them forward, to refine what's happening in them, rather than people constantly breaking down every time they come back to you and they've not actually moved from, you know, first base. They're just, you know, you make them feel better, the energy balance comes up, then they go and do exactly what they've been doing before, and they come back and they go, "Oh, I feel terrible," and then you have to start. So I suppose I've started to create a kind of thought process of, when we started this, which was about sort of 6 years ago, nobody was talking about me time. Me time was kind of a bit of an indulgence, you know, as Brits, you know, "Oh no, I couldn't possibly have an aromatherapy. It's far too indulgent," you know. And I kind of feel we've shifted, and now everyone's talking about me time. But you know, and I suppose the way I talked about it is that people can take 15 minutes of doing some deep breathing with some essential oil, and it will shift where they are, rather than in a state of panic. So we created floral mists and things like that would work with it. So kind of that's where I am. My big interest at the moment is definitely vibrational aromatherapy, the energetics of aromatherapy, how they work on a subtle level to kind of bring you back into balance.
Oh, wonderful. So
that's a big answer. Sorry, you asked for it.
No, don't be sorry. It's so nice to know. So our title for the talk today, for our catch-up, is The Wonder of Aromatherapy, and talking about sort of recapturing the wonder that we may have when we first train, and everything is so new, and the aroma of the oils are new to us, and how they interact with each other, and the blending. And I know that we've kind of discussed privately, some of that can be lost as we progress so much with the science of aromatherapy, which is also necessary and needed because we are practicing professionals. But having to balance that out with not losing the wonder as we figure out so much more about essential oils and how they work together, etc. So how do you manage to, because you've obviously kept that wonder of aromatherapy and essential oils for many years, and how have you managed to do that without being kind of dragged into figuring it all out and allowing it just to be?
Dry. I suppose it's to do with how I approach any individual that I'm working with. I don't see them in just one dimension. I see them as multifaceted, and I also see dis-ease comes in at many different levels. But the first level it hits is your spirit. And you can call that just your joie de vivre, or you can call it your spiritual essence, if you like. And when we lose a connection to that, it starts to permeate down through different levels. So it will affect how we look at things, how we think about things. We could become more critical, we could become more dissatisfied, a bit more judgmental. Then that will filter down onto an emotional level, which means that we can become a little bit more hysterical, a little bit oversensitive, a little bit more guarded or closed down. It depends. Every person deals with things in a different way. And then finally, when all of that stuff starts to imbalance and not flow quite as it should do, it will impact on the physical level. And basically what we don't realize is all of those levels have had to go out of balance for us to deal with, to see the physical imbalance that's presenting itself. So therefore, that is the sum total of all the other levels that have gone out. And depending on what people are processing, it may be more directed to their digestive system if they're not breaking down emotionally what they're having to deal with in life. It might work more with their cellular system. It might work more with their mineral kingdom, so the bones. It might be more structural. So if I come from that premise, then the way I'm going to choose my oils isn't going to be just linear, is it?
No.
I'm going to try and make a multi-dimensional potion or remedy that is going to address what's happening with their spirit, what's happening with them mentally, what's happening with them emotionally, either to support it or also to open and release some of that stuff. And then there's the physical level, which is, if you like, what's happening in the here and now. But there's a kind of journey that people go through to get to a state of imbalance. So if you're kind of blending in that way, you're already sort of coming at it from a very creative perspective. You've still got all the information about what each oil does. And believe me, when we started with Micheline, she only let us work with 10 oils and they were diluted. We weren't allowed to blend them. She just said, you just observe that. Take 100 people and make notes about how they work with sandalwood in different situations. And that was how I started to really hone my skills, really understanding the subtlety of each essential oil. And there's nothing like being restricted to, say, 10 oils for you to become creative. You
Yeah.
start then mixing the two oils and saying,
Yeah.
oh, that with that. So it was very playful. It was a bit of real pragmatic research, but also playfulness.
That's nice.
And I suppose that. I hope that answers it, because I think this is how it's kept me quite playful, because I never look at people in one perspective. I'm kind of looking at their colours and how I can restore the colour back and the flow back. So therefore, you start to look at essential oils from a multi-dimensional level.
Yeah, yeah. So can you remember which were the 10 oils that you had to use for all those months?
Ooh, okay. Lavender, definitely. Juniper,
Yeah.
frankincense, lemongrass, rosewood, geranium. How many have I done? 7? Geranium, basil,
Yeah.
sweet basil. I think there might have been myrrh in there.
Oh, nice.
And ylang ylang.
Oh, nice.
So those were the 10
For
oils.
what, 9 months, did you say?
That's what we worked with. She didn't let us use pure essential oils. Only the senior therapist was allowed. But I used to creep into her room and pinch them. I used to go and sit and sniff her box, and I started buying them by then.
Yeah.
But another thing that really helped me in how I started to be really good at diagnostics was I read Jean Valnet's book
Oh,
from
yes.
cover
Yeah.
to cover.
Yes.
That book is it has so much information in it, in terms of if you want to understand the medicinal application of the oils, because that man was like groundbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I first started, I just spent my time in books all the time, just absorbing as much information as I could.
Yes.
I was learning about tissue salts. I was learning about, and we're in a different time now. Like, we have hundreds of carrier oils, whereas when I was doing it then, there were just really a few that you worked with. And now the carrier oils are as important as the essential oils, because they have so many therapeutic benefits,
Yes.
So
And
a blend can
hydrolats
be
as well.
incredibly neat. Sorry.
And the hydrolats as well. I mean, such a different dimension can be added as well. With them.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
So with having that kind of training, Michelle, and looking at the world of aromatherapy, because you've obviously been involved in the world of aromatherapy for a significant time, to see all the different changes, the peaks of interest as well. And it feels that we are on another peak of interest from the general public using essential oils, and also for people becoming aromatherapists, training in aromatherapy as well. Do you find that the wonder and the sense of discovery of aromatherapy is kind of being lost along the way?
I think so. I think it's being taught in a very clinical way. It's not actually paying enough attention to its legacy.
Yeah.
And if you want to think of the legacy, say, in Chinese medicine, that legacy has been going for 2,000 years. Herbalism and I'll put my teeth back in. Folklore. Folklore have been going for, since the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And aromatherapy, dates back to Egypt and the ancient temples. But, what we've done is we've treated that as almost, well, that's a bit mythical, it's a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah.
But actually, those people were great physicians. They had an incredible understanding of energy and energy balance. And we've just almost kind of said, oh, that's just part of our ancient history, but it's not part of what is aromatherapy today. And part of that tradition was treating the whole body, mind, spirit. It wasn't about just dealing with the physical and the emotional. And I think that's kind of where we've sort of stopped with aromatherapy. We sort of pay lip service to the emotions, but actually we're looking to balance the physical.
Yes.
But if a physical state has been created by an emotional and an energetic dysfunction, then surely we need to look at it in a multidimensional way.
So when you blend for a person, then is the first aspect of blend you look at on a more spiritual level?
No, not necessarily. I'm taking every aspect into consideration, but if it's, say, a digestive issue that's come up.
Yeah.
Sorry, something just came up on my screen. If it's a digestive issue, you know, I'm going to kind of look at the quality of that. So, you know, where does it lie? Is it in the is it in the stomach? Is it in the large intestine? We know that the large intestine is very much about processing things. It's about breaking down information. So emotionally, then I kind of think there might be something that they're having difficulty coming to terms with or assimilating. And mentally, that could mean that their thinking is very rigid and fearful. And then spiritually, what do you want to do to that? Actually make them a little bit more expansive, a little bit more trusting. Do you see what I mean? So that's how I would kind of go about pulling it apart. It's not about ignoring the fact that there's a physical symptom, but there's a root cause. And you know, this is very only treating the symptom and perhaps the emotion is a very, you know, medicinal way of treating. This is what modern medicine, you know, and this is what people like Newton and Aristotle, you know, created a belief system that if it wasn't proven, it was rubbish, really. And actually, before that, before the Middle Ages, people really kind of saw the body as being part of nature as well, and that it was affected by the cycles of nature, and it was affected, you know, and these natural rhythms. I think people are finding now we've lost them. We kind of push our way through constantly. So so when I'm looking at something, even though it's I am going to look at the spiritual side, and the spirit could be just what's dulled their spirit, what's made them lose their passion for life, you know. So it's not always, you know, cosmic and sixth and seventh dimensional energy. You know, although I do work with those sort of energetics as well.
If somebody would describe themselves as an aromatherapist, then Ross, look, I've got the same problem now. I need to put my teeth back in now. What's happening with that?
It's all right. It's catching. Oh no.
If an aromatherapist would not describe themselves as spiritual, would they then still be able to blend at that level, do you think? Or do you think you need to be a spiritual person to do something like that?
Do you know, we could replace spiritual with sensitive.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think it's about being. Yeah. So, you know, and it's what you were saying a little bit earlier about intuitive. So, as aromatherapists, we need to develop a sixth sense. That's something Micheline Arcia used to say to me all the time. In aromatherapy, we have a sixth sense, which is intuition. And intuition is often everything that someone isn't telling you, but you're sensing. So I think spiritual is a little bit of a curveball. I think we all practice our spirituality in different ways. So it's not about telling people they have to be. It's about developing your sensitivity. So you're not kind of looking at things just in a in the, you're not just looking at the world of matter, you're looking at what isn't presenting directly to you, if you know what. So emotions, yes,
that's
you can
where
get that with, sorry.
no, sorry. That's where I think a really good consultation form comes into play as well, doesn't it? Because although you are writing, medical history down and, whatever else that the content of your consultation form that you have, but actually it's all about the answers in between the answers, reading between the lines of truly getting to understand what's going on for that person, isn't it?
Completely.
Yeah.
And it's also, I remember Michelle used to teach us about this. She said, if they've got loads of operations, what's going on in their energy field that's drawing all of this drama into their life?
Yeah.
You're looking at which side of the body most of the issues have arisen in. So left side could be very much related to the past, unprocessed stuff. Right side can be stuff that's happening in the moment that they're finding difficult to take action. And so you're kind of looking beyond what is presented at you.
Yes.
And I don't want to do people a disservice. I'm sure there are amazing teachers out there who are teaching fantastic curriculums.
Yes.
But I just kind of think there is something that has somehow got lost, a way of looking from that multi-dimensional perspective that perhaps the people who used to work with the oils in ancient Egypt or in the temples in Greece were kind of looking at how you harmonize the body, not just on a physical level, but on many different levels. It's kind of really celebrating the complexity of a human being,
Do you think that's kind of come as part of where we are? Thankfully, we've got so much more information on the research and the outcomes of aromatherapy and how they can be impacted in a more clinical setting. We've got so many more papers and funding becoming available for the research of complementary health therapies and specifically aromatherapy, that because we are researching to provide evidence that this works, then actually, because you can't necessarily capture evidence of I have affected somebody on this spiritual level, which then impacts the physical body, that's maybe where we're losing this spiritual element, if we call it spiritual, or the sensing element.
I think my priority isn't to fix, it is to fix the spirit, but it's to fix the whole being.
The person as a whole, yeah.
And I think the word spiritual, unfortunately, kind of gives one a wrong impression. You're really trying to resolve and help the natural energy flow of that person function better.
Yeah.
Because if it function, I do a lot of qigong. So in qigong, when you feel pain, it's because there's a block in the energy flow.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you do the movement to release the block.
Yeah.
So in the same way, you're applying essential oils in a certain formulation to release the energy blocks. And the energy blocks aren't always in just one place. There could be a multitude of things that create an energy block, but it might manifest with a lower back pain, for example.
It's really, really interesting. Really interesting. And actually how wonderful for people coming for treatments, where if they've got lower back pain and heading to their GP and they have maybe 10 minutes or so, and yet they can come to your couch and have a 90-minute treatment with a full consultation where you look at all the different levels. I think, we've got such a wonderful thing that we can offer people who are suffering of physical pain because of an emotional or a spiritual blockage as well, that they might not even consider. You know, it is such a wonderful thing we can offer. I mean, we have such amazing jobs, don't we? We're so lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really
Absolutely,
amazing.
absolutely. You know, I think the thing also to remember, and this is a very interesting thing, you
Yeah.
know, we are a reflection of our world. We have the mineral kingdom inside us. We have the cellular system inside us. We have the animal kingdom. We
Mm.
have the nervous system, which is the communication system.
Mm.
You know, and we forget that, you know, there is an affinity, a natural affinity with touch,
Yeah.
which is what we do through the mineral kingdom,
Yeah.
with the cellular system, through the phytoestrogens that we absorb into our body.
Mm.
Then, you know, how we work on the nervous system, and in aromatherapy we do all of that.
Mm.
We're taking all of that consideration. So it is this huge you know, because aroma helps sometimes if people have been abused or been in difficult circumstances.
Mm.
Touch is not one of the easiest things. You add aroma to it,
Yeah.
and it's affecting their psychology as well.
Yeah.
You suddenly find touch becoming a way to someone releasing
Mm.
a cellular imprint that
Mm.
has affected them,
Mm.
you know, and eventually maybe holding that down will affect them on a physical level. So I'm just, you know, trying to loosen it up a bit so that
Yeah.
we actually open a more multi-dimensional approach to how we work with the oils and the body and the human being, and sort of actually recognize you have certain facts, all right, but the facts are flexible.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? They shouldn't become restrictive for you.
Yeah.
And
That's the danger.
I
Mm.
think it's fear that makes us create such rigid guidelines around
Mm.
things. I think there's a lot of fear um,
Yeah.
around it. And I think it's important, obviously, as you say, to have basic guidelines, because so that people don't use it and abuse it.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's the difference with training in aromatherapy, hopefully through all the education about how the oils work
Yes.
and the power of them. You should understand that, and you're not going to work in a negligent way with them, you
Yeah.
know. But I think there's almost too many restrictions, and it almost has become like traditional medicine in that
Yeah.
way, and we're trying very hard to fit into that model.
Yes.
And even that model has now got limitations, because, you know, if you look at the work of Candice Parts, who basically is now, and you know, she's a biochemist who's
Mm.
now identified that emotions get lodged in the different organs of the body. You know, isn't that amazing that they are now actually taking on board what the Chinese have said for
Mm.
2,000 years?
Mm.
And then, you know, you have people like Bruce Lipton, who's beginning to understand that energy patterns affect our physical well-being.
Mm.
So we're
Mm.
living in a really incredible time where
Yes.
science is beginning to come closer. But
Yeah.
what we've done, I think, is we've become more rigid. We've tried to subscribe to a more traditional medical way of applying
Yes.
aromatherapy.
Yeah.
But actually, medicine is now moving to a much more energetic
Yes.
way of seeing. I think if we could be teaching an element of that in our work, it would be so freeing and so I don't know. It would lift aromatherapy to where I think it needs to be, because I
Yeah.
think, for me, I think the oils are truly millennial. I think they're amazing multitaskers,
Mm.
and they just have this mutability and
Mm.
this, you know, they're so relevant for where we are at the moment, because a lot of people are bogged down in cellular memory.
Mm.
The emotional body is the thing that's the most overactive at the moment. More
Mm.
people are suffering from anxiety
Mm.
and depression.
Mm.
Why? Because they can't release all this stuff that they're
Mm.
holding inside them.
And I think
And
people are looking as well. They're looking for something alternative. They're looking, people more and more in my treatment room. I find that people are looking for alternative ways of just going with medicine. I need to make sure I've explored all avenues and leave the medicine to that is the last resort first. If I can start to look after myself in different ways, then maybe I won't end up having to take that medicine. I've had so many more inquiries for people wanting prescriptive blends for anxiety, for depression. And I think people are starting to realize that there is an alternative to taking the antidepressants. I do believe antidepressants have their place. But I think for people who might be able to be in a position to look at alternatives, or just reach out as a cry of help, really, or I'm struggling with this, can you help me? And that is definitely on the increase, and people are so much more open to it now than in the 8 years that I've been qualified. People are definitely more open to that now, I've found anyway.
Oh, definitely. Funny enough, I was one of my friends, she owns a very big online shop. And she'd actually come for treatment, but we were talking about aromatherapy. And she said it is literally coming in as it's one of the strongest growing sectors. Well-being and aromatherapy currently are areas of huge growth.
Yes.
Because I think people have been, well, if you think about it, doctors are now not prescribing antibiotics because they've seen that the body, is each time it kind of, even though it sorts out an issue, the body then becomes stronger than the antibiotic, or the bug becomes stronger than the antibiotic.
And the impact on health as well for antibiotics, don't they? I mean, I know that a lot of European countries, when they hand out antibiotics now, they hand out probiotics as well.
Exactly.
So, impact on gut health.
And with cancer management now, they're working more with immune boosting. They're beginning to kind of see that just completely devastating the immune system isn't always going to help someone to come back. So they're seeing that they need to replace the life force. So and aromatherapy is something that naturally enhances life force. I think what we have to be careful about is not overdoing it. That's the thing, and that's where the skill of a true aromatherapist comes. But if it's just open to the general public and people are self-prescribing, you can very easily overdose. And, and I suppose that's where something like my range comes in, because I very carefully put it together so that it is safe. Do you know what I mean? And that's not me trying to promote what I'm doing. There are 100 other people doing it. But the care and the thought of how I perceive the human body has gone into that range. It's not something I've done, I just want to make a sleep oil, or I want to do, exactly that 4-dimensional map has gone into how I create any blend. And also I work with vibration in my blends, because I believe everything in life has an energy pattern, and you can enhance about the human body vibrates at 68 megahertz to 70. Toxic emotions like anger and depression can bring that down by 10 megahertz each time you feel that. So body goes towards an illness at about 60 megahertz. So I think a lot of people are functioning at below power. So to have something that has very high life force, we know that rose vibrates at 320 megahertz. So bringing an energy, and it's interesting that we can't use rose in very high quantities now because of IFPA, etc. But do you really need it? Because it's such a high vibration thing.
Yes.
It's the same with hydrosol, hydrolats. They're they have a vibration in them that enhances, but they dilute so that you just kind of lift it gently.
Yeah.
And I think this thing of I don't feel we can go so, you know, I think the whole way one is blending has changed as well.
Yes.
Especially if people are using things on a daily basis, you can't use it at the high levels
No.
that one might have done 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's got to be homeopathic.
Mm.
Because if someone's putting something on their body on a daily basis, it should be something that's enhancing the life force. But,
Yes.
you know, obviously if you're kind of ill or you've got colds and flu, you might do something slightly
Yeah.
stronger
Yeah.
at that moment.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, I
I'm
could
just
listen to you for
waffling on
ages.
here.
Michelle, what if
Oh,
somebody...
that's good. I've got one in my audience.
Yeah, you definitely have.
Yeah.
If somebody is listening to this and thinking, I feel like I'm missing that level of that sensing level. I'm not blending with my senses, or spirituality, or however you would want to label it. If they feel like they're missing that from their blending or from their consulting, how do you think they could recapture that, or how could they capture that and start blending with, using their senses like that?
Oh, well, actually, one way I'd say is actually to do a blind smelling of each of your oils and actually not think about the name of the oil, but
Yeah.
where it's affecting you.
Yeah.
So almost doing like a blind smell. And you can't do too many in one go, but just following the journey of where the aroma takes you, how it makes you feel, where you feel it connect with your body, will sort of almost, what kind of memories is it bringing down, bringing up, how does it make you feel? Which parts of your body do you want to touch with it? So it's kind of like really learning how to connect with it, not just on what you know about the product, about the oil.
Yeah, that's nice.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really nice.
I mean, it's something I do in one of my workshops. I take a group of oils, and they're a mixture of base, middle, and top notes.
Yeah.
And I literally take them through a journey of smelling it and marking down how they feel. And then it's only once they've done that, I give them a chart of more sort of intellectual reasons for it.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they've done a diagram, and I get them to match everything up with a diagram, and then they make an oil based on that.
Yeah. There was I really like do you know Jo Malone? I'm sure you know Jo Malone and her cosmetics. So I was driving home from work one night, and she was a guest on a radio show I was listening to, and I didn't know, but she is really quite dyslexic. So she works with fragrance, but because of her dyslexia, like literally she was struggle with her left and right. And she said because of her dyslexia, she wasn't able to learn about the aromas. So the only way that she's able to learn about her aromas is that she spends 2 hours a day sitting with, just shutting off the world and just sitting with her aromas and learning about them just through her senses. What fragrance that smells like to her, and what memories that invokes for her and stuff. And I just thought, gosh, I know she's a perfumer, not an aromatherapist, but I just thought it's such a wonderful way to learn. Actually, just let the oils tell you what it is that they do.
But then again, who were the original aromatherapists? They were the perfumers. They were the alchemists.
Yeah.
And why were perfumes created? To make people less melancholy, to lift their spirits, So with these are the things that I'm talking about. We're forgetting the historical journey to where we've got to now.
Yeah.
And we're so busy trying to make it a medicinal thing that we're forgetting that there are all these nuances. And, you know, I've trained as a natural perfumer as well. I went and trained with Mandy Aftel about 10 years ago, and I went over to San Francisco four or five times, and it was very interesting because I came to it at a time where I got very disenchanted with aromatherapy. And I read her book. She's got a lovely book called Essence and Alchemy, and basically it sort of reinvigorated my connection to the oils, because it was quite I found it quite a magical book to read. And I didn't put it down. And then it was very funny because I thought, right, I'm going to train with this woman. So I was trying to buy her workbook, and basically couldn't make the purchase. So I rang San Francisco, and she answered the phone, and I went, oh my God, you know, it's like this goddess answering the phone. And she was so cool, and you know, we were kind of like talking, and she said, you must come over and train. And what was the loveliest thing, this is relevant to what you were saying about Joe Malone, when I went there for the first time, it was almost the first time I'd been given permission to just sit and be with the oils, just to smell them and sit with them and play with them, because everything had been done to a structure and had to have an outcome. And so I had 4 days of just literally exploring, you know, even exploring things that didn't work, which is kind of sort of intellectually quite challenging if you've got 25 years plus experience at blending. And it was, and I suppose in a way, one of the things that people say about the way I blend is I blend a bit like a perfumer, because I don't just stick to maybe 3 or 4 or 5 oils. Some of my formulas have got as many as 10 essential oils, 12 essential oils in it. But I'm using them in a very nuanced way. So in natural perfumery, they call them accessories, or they call them mavericks. And what mavericks are, notes that kind of catalyze things into action. And that's how I use these little things. They may only be in at 0.125%, but they're there to activate maybe the lavender. They need to give the lavender a different dimension, not just by smell, but in terms of what I'm trying to get it to do. And then I also blend numerologically. I work to vibrations of numbers. So I do a lot of things when I'm blending. Sorry, I'm not going to go into that because it gets very complicated. I'm currently
like our wonder of aromatherapy to like my wonder of Michelle.
I'm actually working on a vibrational blending course, actually, an online course.
Brilliant.
It was supposed to happen in January, but I've sort of been so overwhelmed by how many things that have been that I've had to do. But I'm sort of setting aside March to kind of really work on that. So I mean, it's something I think will be really interesting for people, and not to kind of think of it as either. It would be interesting for someone who's doing perfume as well as for someone who's working aromatherapy, because I kind of don't separate it. I think it's all aroma, and how you want that aroma to affect you. And it's really learning how to, rather like a cooking recipe, you know. In a way, cooks are alchemists as well, because basically they're trying to evoke a state of pleasure out of the process of eating. So the way they spice things, you know, and if you look at Indian cookery, the spicing, all of that's done to kind of work on your digestion as well as to, you know, and again there, you know, you think about Indian food and it's been hijacked because we've tried to make it normal. And
Yes.
we've lost some of the subtlety of the spicing and why people do it, and that it's connected to Ayurvedic medicine, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so it's an interesting thing. I think we as humans have spent subtly, even though we think we're on the side of alternative medicine, we've somehow got sucked into the sort of whole belief system of having to make everything empirically right,
Yes.
kind of being free enough with
Yeah.
things, you
We
know.
don't want to lose our freedom. No.
No. So it's interesting. I mean, this is great talking to you about this, because I'm getting so many ideas whilst talking to you. That's the trouble.
Don't forget where they came from.
Oh, don't worry. You'll be the first one on the course.
Michelle, so I'm just noticing the time, so I don't want to keep you too long. So I know
We haven't talked too much again, have we, Karen?
No, not us, Michelle, no. I'm going to ask you like the worst question to ask an aromatherapist, but what is your favorite essential oil and why?
Oh, yeah.
I know, isn't it a horrible question to ask?
It is. I suppose my favourite essential oil is jasmine sambac. I love jasmine sambac. I find it utterly transportative and magical and sensual and beautiful, and it makes me feel light and delicate.
Yeah.
And I love working on it with it, because I think it lifts people.
Yeah.
It's almost like taking a veil off people,
Yeah.
you know, when they're kind of a little bit flat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love frankincense.
Yes.
I'm going to start giving you 100 different reasons for different oils. But frankincense, a really good frankincense. You know, I was talking to a lovely guy who supplies me with frankincense resin, and he said that it's very sad because the demand of for frankincense in the Western world is now really affecting the quality, because they're basically harvesting it too much. And so the tree should have 2 or 3 years to recover in between being harvested. And he said that the quality of the frankincense that's being sent over is not very good. You know, they're picking up crystals from the ground, and really good quality frankincense is the Hujari, which is kind of a beautiful lemony cream color. And when you smell that frankincense, it is just unbelievable. But it is quite hard to. Is that you dinging or me?
Yeah, can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear this dinging. I was kind of going, who's dinging? I think it's called Let's Wind This Up, because we
I think it's my children going, what are we having for supper? I think that's what it
is. So anyway, yeah, I would say those are probably my 2 favourites. And once I was very lucky to buy a biodynamic jasmine from India, and unfortunately they didn't have a big supply of it, and it was utterly amazing. I just put 1 drop on the third eye, and people would just go, woohoo, what's going, you know.
I had somebody get in touch with me this week, and they were saying she's had a cancer diagnosis, and she got in touch. She said, oh, I hear that frankincense helps to heal cancer. So I was wondering if you could help me. So I think that's kind of probably why the resources are being used, because of all of this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the way we look at diseases such as cancer is completely wrong. You know, we don't look at it as an energy blockage. I think the first and foremost, we look at it as a death sentence. So it almost kind of changes the energy dynamic in a person. Rather than something that needs to be cleared and reported. It's a really interesting, very interesting time at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It is very, very much so. Well,
Especially with all the challenges going on around the world and in our country and stuff like that.
yeah,
I think people are really feeling, oh,
yeah,
what's going on?
yeah,
You know?
absolutely, absolutely. Especially when it doesn't help when you kind of read the news and stuff as well, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
enough to instill fear just reading the news.
Mm.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining me. I have loved
Pleasure.
speaking with you. I will, when we finish here, I will grab the details of your products just in case anybody would like to buy your product. And do you still do treatments? Can people come for treatments?
They can. I can give you a number, or they can contact me via my email address. Yeah, very much so. I wasn't. I do a lot of healing treatments, less hands-on, long aromatherapy treatments, but just recently everybody keeps asking me to do them, so every time I say no, I'm not going to do any, all right, I'll start again. I don't seem to be able to release it, so yeah.
Oh, well,
I do.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So I'll grab all of your details and we can post them as well so that the IFPA members can get hold of you or come for treatments and buy your products, and look out for your vibrational course, which you're going to be
Yeah.
doing soon.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.